Do you want to have the confidence to truly rock retirement? Well, I'm going to show you how on the Retirement Answer Man Show. Hey there, welcome to the show. My name is Roger Whitney. I'm your host. I noticed the last few weeks I haven't said who I was, but we're friends here, right? Well, if you are new to the show, so glad to have you here. My name is Roger Whitney, and we just noodle on how to not just survive retirement, but really have the confidence to rock it. Now, it was great seeing everybody that came to our webinar last week. Over 500 people. It was a great discussion about all these non-financial topics that we need to at least be aware of in retirement. And we tried to build a framework for how to evaluate yourself, do some self-examination, so you know where you might be pretty strong and where you might need a little bit of attention. And we shared a worksheet on how to do that self-evaluation. And now if you missed this, we post all of the replays to our Retirement Plan Lives, any meetups we have as a show at rogerwhitney.com/resources. So you can find it there. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about people and play in the non-financial realm. And then next week, which is the last week of May, we're going to talk about, okay, I understand we have this big disruption in the rhythm of our life. How do we create our new rhythm of life? What do I do once I've identified some areas to focus on? How do I start to walk that journey? So we're going to help you figure that out next week. So let's get on with the show. When it comes to relationships and play, we've gotten a good taste of this and how we get impacted over the last year and a half now as a result of COVID. Relationship-wise, I know for me, my relationships have suffered over the last year or so. I mean, not my family. We're as good as we've ever been. But all the people that I see at conferences, the people that I usually travel to, I have a lot of friends that live in other places. Some of us have just totally lost touch. Others of us have tried to be on Zoom a little bit and connect, but it's not really the same. It's not the same as being face to face. And now that we are semi-opened up as a world and in the US, I'm planning some trips, going to Florida. In August, I'm going to Ohio to do the Pelotonia, which is a bike ride. I'm going to raise money for cancer. I donate to that. Not for cancer, but for the fight against cancer. Let me be clear on that. And during that trip, I'm actually probably going to take a week and a half and essentially do a tour to reconnect with friends and clients all through the Midwest as I drive through Atlanta to Tennessee to Ohio, then probably across to Chicago. Maybe I'll hit Michigan, come back down through St. Louis. I'm actually going to extend it just so I can reconnect with people. So we've experienced that, right? Well, in retirement, we have to think about the people that keep us company. And research has shown that as we age, our network of people decreases over time. There's an American Time use survey, and I'll share the article in our 6-Shot Saturday, that measured the hours per day that you spent with different types of people based on age. For example, in your 20s, you would spend about 2 hours a day with friends. But as you got older, and especially in your 40s and 60s and 80s, it went down to less than an hour a day. Your children, you spent well over 4 hours a day in your 20s, 30s, and in your 40s, and then you see a drastic decrease down to about maybe an hour a day in your 60s and 70s. And the only graph that goes from the bottom left to the upper right is the hours that you spend alone. According to the survey, when you're 20, you spend about 4 hours by yourself a day. When you're 60, it goes to about 6 hours. When you're 80, it goes to about 8 hours a day. And they show coworkers obviously goes down significantly as you age. Your partner goes up a little bit after retirement, but then it goes down drastically as you get older. So the point here is the research show that our network of the people we spend time with decreases over time, and the number of hours we are alone increases as we age. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Doesn't mean that it's going to be the same way for you or for me. But I think what's at stake here, and I think is always important, what's the problem or what's the issue? Our network decreases over time. And what are the stakes of this? Why do we even care about this? And I think the reason we care about this, or we need to be cognizant of it, is that you look at all the research on happiness, relationships is a big component of having a very happy life, a fulfilled life. So if we're not intentional about the relationships as we get older, I think the natural ebb or the natural flow of relationships is for it to decrease as we get older. So if we're not intentional, we're not going to be able to combat that. And the studies on loneliness, sadness, depression as we age are pretty clear. It's a huge issue that we need to address is our relationships. A couple ideas on this is that obviously the spousal relationship, if you're married, is a big one. But whether you're married or you're single, as you get older, I think one way we need to be very intentional is to make sure we are connecting and building relationships with people that are younger than us. And that's going to do a few things. One is, if everybody we know is our age and older, that means everybody we know is going to be dealing with the issues of aging, the aches and the pains and the death and all that other stuff. And as we get older, it's just going to become a last person standing type of structure where we will slowly unintentionally become lonely just because everybody drifts away. Whereas if we foster relationships with people younger than us, they're going to be more interested in new things, which will help keep us younger. They're going to be more active, which will help us be more active. They're going to help us stay more engaged in the world. The best analogy I can give you is, I think of this because we've owned pets all of our life, is the transition dog, right? We have Sherlock. We love Sherlock. He's about to be 7. He's acting like he's an old man a little bit. He's hilarious. He's so set in his ways. But when he is around younger dogs, he plays a little bit more. He gets a little more giddy up in his step. And so when we return from Colorado, maybe in the fall, maybe after, because we have a trip to Minnesota as well, we're considering getting a puppy. It'll be a Great Dane puppy. Maybe it'll be Holmes. I don't know. To have a younger dog, one for transitional purposes, because Sherlock's going to be 7. Great Danes live around 9 or 10 on average. But also, not just for the transition, but having a younger one, although it's going to annoy the heck out of Sherlock a lot, it's also going to keep some play in him, keep some giddy up in him, and help him stay fresher. So hopefully it'll help increase his quality of life. It works the same way with us. And I mentioned it before, my good friend Dan Miller, who is in his early 70s. I would say most of his friends are younger than he is. I consider myself a good friend of Dan, and I'm 54. He is very intentional. Both he and his wife, Joanne, are very intentional about nurturing friendships and not really thinking about age. They're not ones to sit around and just talk about retirement or aches and pains. They want to get out there and do stuff. So I think this is an area that why this is so important to enrich your life, to rock retirement. Now, the other part of this is play, right? What's the problem? Well, we just naturally slow down and close the aperture on experiences. We do less. It's harder to mountain bike. It's harder to swim. It's harder to walk, whatever it is. We naturally will do less. And I know with my wife with psoriatic arthritis, we were golfing the other day and she had aches in her knee and it was just not a great day for that. And it's a natural thing to say, I just need to go sit down. But she didn't. Because she knows from her research that one of the best things you can do if you're aching is move. Keep things limber and loose and try to work through that, because the more you sit down, the more you atrophy. And play, there's also this opportunistic thing, and this sort of goes along with the relationships, I would imagine, is if you don't have younger friends, it's easier to do less. And again, I think COVID is a perfect example, and I've struggled with this even at my age, is, my day is work at the house, go downstairs, walk Sherlock, relax. I got to get myself out of the house. My world has shrunk, as I imagine yours has, because you're not able to go be amongst your people as much as you may have normally done. but also you physically have had your world shrunk. Can't go to the mall. You can't go to movies. You can't go dancing. All these things, all the, the sports that you may enjoy, all that stuff is shrunk. Well, that happens as you get older. So this is a little bit of a highlight of, man, I get cabin fever. And so we need to make sure that we don't let that happen in non-COVID times. And the stakes here are obviously you atrophy physically, mentally, and emotionally. And I know people that are literally just waiting to die. That's what the stakes are at the extreme. And they're so in a funk that they can't find their way out, and there's no way for me to help them out. That's the extreme, right? And I think mentally, we don't want to think. You ever see the movie Napoleon Dynamite? Sort of a weird, quirky movie. Funny, but there's the uncle, I think it is, or the friend. I forget who he is, but he was a football star, and he still has his jersey. He still plays like throwing the ball around, like in talking about the old days. And I think from a mindset standpoint, we don't want to be that guy. We don't want to be someone that is remembering the glory days and thinking that the best days are behind us. The best days are not behind me. They're coming. The best days are not behind you. And having that mindset gets you into play a little bit more. Stop taking life so seriously. Go explore, experiment. It's important. So these are a couple of the problems that people can run into and some of the stakes of not dealing with this. So I just want to bring these to your attention so you can evaluate how you feel you're doing with these things right now. So maybe you should focus on them. With that, let's have a discussion with our head retirement coach in the Rock Retirement Club, Kevin Lyles, BW, on essential characteristics of a healthy relationship. So, Mr. Lyles, I've just been talking about relationships after retirement and sort of the problem that people face and the stakes at risk if they don't navigate it successfully. So I thought we could have a chat because I know you've done some research on the essential characteristics of what really a healthy relationship is.
Sure. Yeah, these come from Dr. Richard Johnson's book, The New Retirement. And these apply to any relationship between two adults. So they apply whether you're married or not, but I think they're especially important for spouses to think about as you head into retirement, which is a sign of such transition and change. So the first, and there are 6 of them, 6 essential characteristics of a healthy relationship. The first is mutuality. It's where each partner's overall needs are valued equally, and you create a balanced union of interdependence.
How do you do that? I've been married 30 years, and essentially you're saying each party has a voice in the relationship or an equal voice.
Well, that may get to another one of the 6 essential characteristics. This is just more that you're going to value each party's overall needs equally. And I think the word overall is important there because in some situations, obviously, you may say, well, yeah, this one of us, it's more important to them, so they get this one. But overall, you need to value them equally. I think the way to think of it is the opposite of mutuality is self-centeredness. So that's probably a good tip as to what we want to avoid when we're trying to build a healthy relationship. And then how do you do it? Maybe the second one starts to get to that, Roger, and that is respect. When each partner sees and appreciates the uniqueness of the other. And this is what I think is important. It's not about seeing a difference and tolerating it. It's seeing a difference and saying, that's what makes my partner who they are. That's their inner beauty. The opposite of respect is resentment. So you don't appreciate the unique characteristics of your partner. You resent them.
That's one that can be very difficult to navigate initially. I remember early in our marriage when Shauna would come home from work, and I got to be careful here, Kevin, because I'm talking about my wife and she might be in the shower, so I might be okay. She expresses herself in the moment, happy, sad, mad, whatever. And I am much more reserved and controlled with those things. And when she would express herself, she'd come home from work and be very upset about something. And she would express herself. And because of how I operate, I used to view that as, why are you complaining so much? Right? It would really annoy me. And then probably about 10, 15 years ago, I came to appreciate. I wasn't taking it personally. This is just her way. And now it's actually enduring. When she has a horrible shot on the golf course, which she did yesterday, she was not playing very well yesterday, and she would express herself. I viewed it differently. Rather than become sandpaper, it became an endearing quality about her. I imagine that's sort of what we're talking about here, right?
So it only took you 15 or 20 years to get it right. You're about on schedule. No, I completely agree. You know, as you know, Sally is an artist, and I'm very much not an artist. And the way she thinks and looks at things are different. And at the end of it, isn't that what makes life special with that person?
Exactly.
Appreciating that uniqueness.
And to share equally, for her, it was me. When something's annoying me, when there's something that's bugging me, I get very broody. I go into myself. I need my alone time. I just think a lot. And for her, it was like I was closing off and just being a jerk. And she came to realize when she can identify now when I need some space to go figure it out in my head.
Yeah. And the really special thing about marriage is when not only do you respect and appreciate those differences, but when you realize you need them. You know, it didn't take me long to figure out, boy, I wouldn't want to live 24/7 with myself. So I need someone who's different.
And we're talking about marriage here, but this goes true with friendship too.
Absolutely.
Right. I think of you and I and how our friendship has progressed over the last couple of years, because we're very different people. And we sort of learn the rhythm of how you communicate. And when I understand the context and how you communicate and vice versa, I can interpret it more and not take it. I can take it with the right perspective of I know you, so I understand how you communicate, so I don't take things personally or vice versa.
Right. It's easy to misread someone's intentions when you don't understand that, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's the third essential characteristic, which is communication. And it's when each partner uses the language of caring and compassion. You know, you spend quality time together, you resolve the inevitable differences that arise in any relationship with interaction skills, with healthy, healing interaction skills. And just to touch on what are the best communication skills? It's active listening. It's attending to each other's feelings. It's valuing both the message and the speaker, and speaking with a desire or listening with a desire to understand rather than just trying to respond. How often do you catch yourself when someone, either your spouse or a friend, is talking and you're forming your answer while they're speaking? That's not a good way to listen and understand. So communication is the third essential characteristic.
Which is one of the hardest things, I think, when you're close to someone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know if you have this, but I find myself at times stopping and carrying on an internal conversation with myself. I want to communicate this, but will it be received properly? Will the meaning I want to convey, or will it just make matters worse? And usually when I have those internal conversations, I resolve it by not having that communication.
Well, and you have to choose your moments. Usually when you think of, especially the more powerful it is, the more you want to do it in the moment when you're really feeling it. And sometimes that's not the best time to do it because everybody's not in the emotional space. One thing I've observed in my practice, because I work with individuals, but also with couples, is when it's just an individual, say a single person, when they're communicating to me, they can't hear themselves. It's the old thing where they're trapped inside the Coke bottle and they don't have any perspective because it's their life and they can't hear themselves. And when I reflect back things that seem totally obvious, they're like a eureka moment. And then when it's couples, it's sort of the same thing. We can't hear the other spouse. And there's a lot of actually things going on in the brain in terms of understanding people's speaking rhythm and everything else. But one spouse will say something that I'll reflect back and it will be a revelation to the other spouse. And the one that articulated it will say, well, I've been saying that for years. They don't hear each other. It's hard.
Why do you listen to him and not me, right?
Exactly.
The fourth essential characteristic is intimacy. And this may sound like it's only for spouses, but I actually think it's probably more valuable, at least to a lot of men, for friendships. And intimacy is sharing on a profound personal level with attachment, devotion, and affection. And the reason this is so valuable is what it does for us. When you share with a partner that way, it grounds us. It allows us to feel confident in who we are and gives us a sense of life meaning. And the opposite of intimacy is emotional estrangement. It's keeping that distance and not sharing your emotions with the other. And that inhibits forming a healthy relationship.
That's a hard one. I'm part of this talent and leadership program, and there's about 8 individuals that run businesses. And this goes to your point. It's a lot of internal work, and everybody's running businesses, but it's interesting in that I have probably seen more people be transparent and cry in that room once a month than I've seen, I can't remember when. The intimacy that is created by the environment, I guess, and that it's a safe place is really extraordinary. Where I've shared a few things that I've never shared. I shared a story about my youth. I haven't told anybody. That was the first time I've ever shared that story outside my head. And that's hard to find those safe places.
It sure is. And you're right. It has to be a safe space to be able to do that. I think this is one area where men have so much to learn from women. I know in my marriage, I have learned so much from watching Sally interact with friends and us. I mean, she had to teach me in our own relationship early on, and I continually get reminders, but really it's watching her interact with others. Because I think when a bunch of men get together, they tend to just be superficial, right? Even with your best friends, and the communication, sometimes you don't get to a deeper level. And it's so healthy to do that. So I think if we observe our spouses or other females, I think you can learn a lot.
Well, I'm coming to spend a day with you in about 2 weeks. So my goal is to have you cry at some point.
Well, if you golf with me, you're likely to see that the way my golf game is. The fourth essential characteristic is trust. And this is when each partner can rely on the other without question. When you genuinely accept the other, the opposite of trust is doubt. And clearly, this takes a relationship that has progressed, right? Before you can really start trusting, but it's important that you do.
And so what's number 5?
That was number 5 is trust. And then number 6 is commitment, which is staying power, perseverance, steadfastness in a relationship, never giving up on the relationship, proceeding when others might have lost hope. And the opposite of commitment is indifference.
So I think of my best friend in the world, Eric E. We've known each other since I was a sophomore in high school. We worked at Chuck E. Cheese together and practically lived at his house a lot of high school. So there's a moment where I didn't date a lot in high school, and he dated a lot, and he was dating this girl, and we went to a New Edition concert. It was New Edition and Morris Day and the Time, and he couldn't go for some reason, and I went, and I ended up kissing his girlfriend at the concert.
Ooh.
Yeah, right. I know. That's a betrayal, right? And long story short, obviously, he learned about it. We discussed it. He was committed to the relationship because we had a lot of other things. And I royally betrayed that relationship in this moment in high school. And to this day, our families get together every year. And my wife and his wife and our kids are integrated, even though they're still in Michigan. And we were committed to the relationship, and he showed me a lot of grace then. So I guess that's the kind of thing. It's good to close certain people off, I guess, but you got to be careful with that.
There will be times when trust is challenged, and you have to have commitment to get through that, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm assuming his wife that you now get together with, that's not the girl, right?
No, it's not. No, it's not.
That would make it more awkward.
That would be, it was high school. I was an idiot back then for sure. And one of the reasons we're talking about this essential characteristics of healthy relationships, I think, is when you retire, a lot of your relationships change. The season passes. It could be through work or conferences that you attend regularly. Those relationships are still there, but the season has really started to ebb, and you're recreating a lot of new relationships, maybe because you moved. How do you navigate that? Because you've done this, Kevin, over the last couple of years.
Sure. Yeah, they do need to evolve. And some of them will naturally fade away. And that's probably appropriate. But the ones that are important, you don't let that happen. You just have to change the nature of the relationship. You're not seeing each other every day, and you need to do that. And then with new relationships, that's the most interesting part to me. The new people I've met since I retired now almost 3.5 years ago is I'm a different person, and I'm still figuring out who my new identity in retirement is. So it's kind of interesting is how you introduce yourself. I don't mean the initial introduction. I just mean as you get to know someone, what parts of yourself you're revealing. That's interesting.
Because you were a corporate attorney for a very well-respected corporate attorney. And would I have known you had I met you 6 years ago? Would I recognize you relative to the BWR Kevin I know?
No, not at all.
No.
We're very different, I think. And it's still a work in progress. That's the beauty. We talk about retirement not being an event. It's a transition into a new phase. And I think the same is true with your own identity and who you are as a person. Your underlying values don't change, but the parts of yourself that you reveal to the world, I think, do change. And so, like I say, it's a work in progress. It's very enjoyable to me. The other big relationship that we ought to touch on is obviously with your spouse, because that's the tough one. You know, we have this thing called gray divorce, that it's the period in life between 60 and 70 when the most divorces occur. And the majority of them have been married over 25 years. So if you're going to do any retirement planning at all, think about your most important relationship and how to maintain it and how to build it.
Yeah, because the calculus has changed. When you are together outside of work for long periods of time and you realize I have not, in the olden days, it was, I only have 6 or 7 years or 8 years and we'll pass away. Now it's 30 years with this person. It's more important than ever to invest in that.
Did you read Bill Gates' statement about him and Melinda's marriage? They're separating and going to get divorced.
I saw that, but I didn't read the statement. What was the gist?
Yeah, it was a wonderful statement. And I guess I said it was Bill's. It might have been a joint statement. I'm not sure. But the statement was, we decided we can no longer continue to grow together as a couple, so we're separating. And I just thought they've got that part right, because that's what you need to do. Again, marriage isn't an event and then it's over. It's something you need to continue to grow with. Your relationship needs to grow and evolve just as you do as an individual. And they apparently decided they were growing in different directions. And so they decided to end the marriage. But that's a good way to think about your relationship, is how can we continue to grow and evolve it in ways that are desirable to both of us?
And just to round this out in terms of keeping the key relationships when you retire that you've had during your career, say, but as you create new relationships, I mean, we're a new relationship since you've retired. I don't know that the other Kevin, I know you, goofy guy, is it almost like I think of what I tell my kids. It's like you get to choose who you associate with, and you want to choose people that are going to want the best for you and challenge you in ways to become a better self, right?
Absolutely.
I think of a client years ago who told me her and her husband lived in a golf club community and they loved it. They had great friends, but they moved. And although they liked the people, they realized they ran a little faster than they did. And if they remained in that community, they were going to become alcoholics. And their main reason for moving was, we like those people, but they're not supporting where we see where we're going if we continue this. And you get those choices a lot more than you do in your career sometimes when you're retired. So you want to be intentional about it.
Yeah. And it's good that they were. You do have to decide which relationships do you need to end because they're not healthy for you. So I think that's a good way to think about it.
All right. Well, you can't end ours. We're in. Thanks for sharing your wisdom.
Good to talk to you, Roger.
So now it's time to answer some of your questions, which is one of my favorite things to do. If you have a question for the show, go to rogerwhitney.com/Ask Roger, and you can leave a audio message or write me an email. And to answer your questions, I hate doing this alone. So I brought on rock star Nicole Mills to play the role of, you and your questions. Hey, Nicole.
Hey, Roger.
Ooh, you're very loud.
How are ya?
You're projecting today. Excited to have you on the show as always. You look happy today, which is nice.
Happy every day.
Yeah, there you go. What questions do we have today?
Well, my job's pretty easy to start. We've got an audio question from Richard on Social Security.
Get that going. What's up, Richard?
Hello, Roger. This is Richard from Atlanta. I love the program. I love the club. Great people. I have a question regarding Social Security. I just turned 70 years old, but I still work full time, and my income is well over six figures. Because of that, should I immediately start taking Social Security? And will there be benefits or things that would not be good to take it at this time? Please get back with me and let me know so I'm not just letting money on the table. Love to hear from you. Thanks for everything.
Hey, Richard. So you're 70 years old. So it's funny when we do this, by the way, because Nicole can't hear the audio question. So she's totally oblivious to what Richard asked. So you're 70 years old and you are still working and making substantial income. And you're wondering, should I claim Social Security or not? Well, after age 70, Richard, benefits will not increase anymore. So there's really no benefit to delaying Social Security. So I would suggest that you look at filing for Social Security, even though you're still making substantial income. And obviously, the impact of that is you'll probably pay tax on a good portion of the Social Security, but there's really no benefit for waiting. So yeah, you don't want to leave the money on the table. Start getting that check. That was an easy one. I like the easy ones. What else we got, Nicole?
All right. Well, maybe the next one will be easy too. We have one from Jeff on Medicare.
Yeah, my mother just moved in with us from Virginia, and her Aetna Medicare plan told her they can't cover her in Georgia, and I have no clue as to how to pick a new one. Can you suggest a resource or a Medicare Advantage plan to go with? Thank you.
Hey, Jeff. So your mother-in-law just moved in with you, and navigating Medicare and moving can sometimes be a little bit of a challenge. So it depends on what kind of Medicare she has. So if you have the original Medicare Part A and B, you don't have to do anything because those are transferable anywhere across the country. But if you have Part D, which is the drug benefit, or Part C, which is a Medicare Advantage type of plan, those are the two that you're going to have to deal with. And from your question, you say the provider that she had in her original state doesn't have a plan where you live. So she should be able to use what's called a special enrollment period to choose a Part D. And if she's on Medicare Advantage, a new Medicare Advantage plan because of this change in residency. Now, how you go about finding those, not something that I do in my practice. My suggestion would be is that you contact Boomer Benefits, and we'll put a link in our 6-Shot Saturday. Danielle Roberts has been on the show during our Medicare series a number of times, and she's actually was a keynote at our original Rodeo Roundup with conference at the club. And she is the owner of Boomer Benefits. And I have a lot of people that have used them to navigate these kind of decisions, and I haven't had a bad review yet. So I'd suggest you contact Boomer Benefits. So hopefully that helps you, Jeff. Nicole, I feel like I'm losing my voice. Don't eat a sandwich quickly before you record, I think is the lesson I'm learning.
Yeah, y'all are missing all of the pausing and coughing that's happening during this recording session.
Eat slow. I did not chew each bite 20 times, but I will do so in the future.
All right. Well, our next question is from John. I like this question. It's a good one. He has a question about personal capital. He's used Mint in the past, but he only gave them one bank account. And now he's thinking of using personal capital as an online money management tool. He wants to know your thoughts about security with online money management platforms.
So why do you like this question, Nicole?
Because I'm always a little bit leery of putting all my stuff online. I feel like it makes it vulnerable. So I'm interested to hear what you have to say about it.
Well, all your stuff for
it's
you
probably there.
and John is already online. We have online bank accounts. I log into my credit card account. And so when you add it to something else, say personal capital, and I'm guessing what you're thinking, John, is that you can input your data, your username and password, and it'll automatically aggregate and pull in all the data from these various accounts. So you can have a dashboard in one place. It's called account aggregation. And there's some benefits to it if you're able to do it successfully, because you get to see everything in one place and it serves as a dashboard, I guess, as I said. Now, personal capital specifically uses 256 encryption, which is roughly the standard for financial firms, whether it's personal capital or the other ones that you mentioned, or even if you have an account at Charles Schwab or Vanguard, they're going to have some type of security that's equivalent to that. And that's probably the standard. The question is, so is that enough? Well, we're sort of in a Cold War when it comes to internet security. We've seen, the pipelines that had a cyber attack and were shut down here recently. A number of years back, a place where all of your data is, Equifax, had a security breach. They hold the keys to everything pretty much in terms of your information. And so the more places that you give your usernames and passwords, you just add to the possibility that one of them could have a data breach where somebody grabs a username or password. Generally, well, not generally, these firms are required from a regulatory standpoint to have a cybersecurity policy. And if they have a breach, they have to notify every single customer that it's happened. And we've seen this happen with Target and a few other companies. I know our firm has a cybersecurity policy, and if a portal was breached, anybody that had any kind of information there would have to receive an official notice. So is it safe to use? Honestly, I think it is. I think it's fine because, and here's my logic for that. One is they have monitoring services. There's some regulatory infrastructure in place to help protect people if something happens. The data is likely already out there. And I say that, Nicole, I know because we have this question in the Rock Retirement Club about the security of the club and the security protocols of the club. There are going to be people that are very protective of their data. And it's a trade-off. The more protective you want to be, meaning the less places that you have it in personal capital or some other data aggregation platform, the less services you're going to get. And everybody's going to have to decide where they fit on that spectrum. Or I'm not giving anything to anybody, and I'm going to limit the number of places. Or, you know what, it's all pretty much out there. I'm going to use complex passwords. I'm going to change them in a systematic way. And I'm trading that risk for the benefit of the ease of use. Personally, I don't worry too much about it. I do use password manager. I use complex passwords. I change them periodically. And for me,
do you use a credit monitoring service? Just out of curiosity.
I do not.
Okay.
I do not. Yeah, I don't. I've never had an issue. Well, I actually have had my identity stolen once. This was like early days.
Like a credit card number or your actual identity, like your driver's license or something like that?
I had somebody apply for a credit card in my name and use it. And it came to me when it got to collection somehow. And then I had to go unwind it. But this was probably 15 years ago. It really wasn't the dark web. We hardly had the web then. And I think the issue, if it happens now, is even a bigger deal. So I wouldn't be opposed to credit card monitoring or credit report monitoring, but I don't do it. I do get my one report a year, though. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if that helps, John, or not, but it's a trade-off. The barn door is sort of open on all of this stuff for the most part. And it ends up being a Cold War that cyber criminals are going to keep attacking, and the system's always going to try to keep it more secure.
Well, let's move along from that fun.
You like that question. It was a good question. It's a hard one.
It was a good question. It was. Cynthia wrote in and she just had some comments that she wanted to share about retirement. She said, I've learned that taxes will eat away at your retirement savings like termites, that when offered the lump sum or the monthly pension option is usually the better choice. I ask myself the question, why are all these companies offering it? Because it's good for their bottom line, not necessarily mine. And she says to keep learning, researching, and asking questions. And that's how I found the Retirement Answer Man.
Very good. Very good. That came from a series. I think she emailed that a while ago, if I recall, Cynthia, where we were asking for wisdom from current retirees, because that's where there's people that have actually done it and they have that perspective. There's jewels in there. And Cynthia shared a few. And if you have some wisdom, let's say you're already retired, you hear the questions that we get. If you have some wisdom that you want to share from your journey. I'd love to hear it. And again, you can go to rogerwhitney.com/ask Roger. You actually don't have to ask anything. You could type in.
You can tell Roger.
Yeah. I'll do another URL. Tell Roger. Yeah. Taxes. And that's one reason why we brought Andy Panko into the Rock Retirement Club, because he is an enrolled agent and focuses on taxes. The pension on the lump sum, I definitely agree that in my practice anyway, typically the pension is the better option. Not always, but generally. Not so much because the company is trying to get out of it, but more it's financially which one works better in the plan. That guaranteed income makes a huge difference. It makes all of planning a lot easier. And the payouts that you'll get on a pension are typically a lot more than you'll get in, say, a deferred annuity or something like that. Cynthia, thanks for sharing the wisdom. Actually, the last part of that, Nicole, not the part about finding me or the show, is I still have questions, learning, researching, curiosity, right? You guys can't see this, but Nicole's here. And if you were on the webinar, you would have saw it. But here's my new little sticker. I'm going to show it to Nicole.
Oh, I like it.
And this is from the show Ted Lasso. Ted Lasso? I
hear good things. I have not seen it.
So Ted Lasso is a great show. Right now, it's my favorite series. I think I'm watching it for the third time.
That one on Hulu?
No, it's on Apple Plus TV.
Okay.
And it's John Sudeikis, I think his name is, from Saturday Night Live. Jason Sudeikis. Thank you. And so essentially, there's a reason I'm talking about this related to Cynthia's. He's this American football coach, wins like a Division II national championship, and he's brought over to coach a Premier League football team in England, which he doesn't know anything about soccer, but he's this great motivator, positive dude. It's a wonderful, wonderful show. If you can get over the crudeness of the language, there's a lot of saucy language, spicy language in it. So
is it like British crude language?
Yes, it is.
Saucy in there.
Yes. British crude. If you can get over that, because we tried to have my mother-in-law watch it and she couldn't get past it.
Oh,
yeah, it was not. But anyway, I have this thing. It says, be curious, not judgmental. And Cynthia, it sounds like you're living that spirit of being curious, and that will lead to an amazing life. In fact, Nicole, remind me, well, you helped write it and draft it. So let's put a link to the video, because there's a little video where he talks about being curious, not judgmental. That's on
Noted.
YouTube. So we'll put that in Six Shot Saturday. So thanks for the wisdom, Cynthia. With that, let's go set a
SMART sprint.
On your marks, get set.
And we're off to set a little baby step we can take in the next 7 days to rock retirement. After years of practice, I think we've gotten that little intro part down.
You are doing so well.
It took us years to get that little phrase down, just so you know, if you're new to the show. And so in the next 7 days, I want you to just simply let what we talked about in terms of relationships and play marinate. I want you just to let it be there. If you're on our webinar training we had last week, we talked about a big part of this non-financial stuff is just acknowledging that these things can happen and that we perhaps should think about them. So that's all I want you to do. Don't you like it when you get easy ones? So I got an email the other day, Nicole, from Daniel, and I was talking about anxiety about the non-financial stuff, that because we don't really acknowledge a lot of this non-financial stuff, you know, losing our identity and losing friends and things like that, that we have this anxiety and we don't know what to do with it. So we put it over on the financial money side of it. And I said, it's like displaced anxiety, which it's not. And Daniel told me. So basically he was saying, dude, you're using another word wrong, right? But Daniel didn't say it that way. He says it usually the way you tell me, which is all the time, because I do make mistakes all the time. He sandwiched it. You know the sandwich. You do the sandwich all the time with me.
I do, yes.
So why don't you explain what the sandwich is?
So the sandwich is that you have the criticism as, I guess, the filling of your sandwich, and you surround it with positive comments.
And that is exactly what Daniel did. He talked about, I think it was his dad, like my mom, worked all their life and right at about the time they were going to retire, they passed away, and how he related to that and appreciated the message that we have. There's the positive. Then he said, being a scientist, it's not displaced, it's misplaced. So, dude, you got it wrong, is basically what he said, but in a really nice way. And then talked about how he just accept everybody for who they are and was so thankful for all that we do.
Well, that was very nice of him.
Well-delivered criticism and correction, and I love it. And don't think I don't know that you do that to me all the time.
I plead the fifth.
All right. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Hey, it's time for that all-important disclaimer. We so appreciate you listening to the show and love your questions and love the teaching that we're able to provide here. And actually, it helps us too. But remember, you're not our clients.
Not love it if you took advice from us on the show.
We would not love it if you took advice from us on the show. Realize this is helpful in education. Talk to your legal advisor, your tax advisor, or your financial advisor before you make any decisions.
We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of Retirement Answer Man. Be sure to visit rogerwhitney.com/answers to access the Retirement Answer Library with over 30 checklists to help you make the most of the only life you have. Remember, you have more power than you realize to create an amazing life starting today with Retirement Answer Man. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Have a wonderful day.